Hello, everyone. I hope we are all doing fantastic today. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's truly a privilege to be your host for this session of our webinar series. Before I introduce myself, here is how our time together will unfold. After these welcoming remarks, I will formally introduce our guest and speaker. We will then move into his keynote session, where he will share insight and experience from his journey. Following the keynote, we will open the floor for a Q&A conversation, where I will take few questions from myself and also from you, our audience. And finally, we will conclude with key takeaway, a few community updates, and our closing remarks. My name is Mariam Kone. I am a proud graduate of Harvard Business School. I currently have the honor of chairing the programming committee for the Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs Africa chapter. Professionally, my work focuses on safeguarding consumer safety, enhancing product quality, and protecting brands across multiple markets in Africa at the Coca-Cola Company. My work is deeply rooted in trust, responsibility, and care, because the product we deliver reach millions of families and communities every day. Alongside this corporate journey, my heart has always been in economic empowerment and capacity building here on the continent. This passion led me to co-found a soft commodity trading venture dedicated to strengthening the capacity of African farmers and connecting them to global value chains, ensuring that value is created in Africa and remains in Africa. Now, before we dive in, let me introduce the beautiful community that brings us together today. Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs Africa is the Africa chapter of a vibrant global network that spans all 13 Harvard schools. At HAE Africa, we curate practical founder-centered conversations like this one, designed to help you expand your thinking, strengthen your strategy, and most importantly, raise capital intelligently and sustainably. We are here to learn together, grow together, and build together. To make sure we all have the best experience today, just a few quick notes. This session is being recorded for those who would like to revisit or share it. Please use the Q&A panel to submit and upvote questions for the conversation. And feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself. We love to know who is in the room and from where you are joining from. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for. I am honored to be joined by a visionary leader for whom I have a profound admiration. His work has shaped impact at scale on this continent. He is a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School and spent over 25 years raising capital and designing catalytic partnership for development. He was instrumental in establishing South Africa's Green Funds, over $170 million deployed towards sustainability and innovation. He has funded dozens of social enterprises, helping them to grow where others thought they could not. Today, he serves as the CEO of the Youth Employment Service, a national initiative restoring dignity, income, and opportunity to young people in Africa. Under his leadership, YES mobilized around 3 billion rand per year the equivalent of $170 million from nearly 1,000 corporate sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, our today's guest is Ravi Naidu. He is here to share what works, what doesn't, and how mission-driven founders can raise the right capital to scale meaningful impact. I'm also delighted to share that Ravi is the newly appointed Vice President of our HAE Africa, where he leads our partnership committee, a role perfectly aligned with his passion for unlocking ecosystems and opportunity. Please feel free to connect with Ravi if you have any partnership idea for our young chapter. Ravi, we are deeply honored to welcome you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Thank you very much. And very good to be here with all of you, those of you online, and of course, those of you who are going to join after the event. This is recorded. Thanks very much. Very, very glad to be here with you and to share some insights and lessons learned from my years of experience that Mariam has mentioned. So thanks very much for that. So perhaps maybe just to give a bit of background on myself, and I think thank you again, Mariam, for well, firstly for the invitation, and secondly for sketching out some of the background. So I have to say, I am a serial impact person, and for the last 25 years, from my first job to now, this has pretty much been what I've focused on: impact, social entrepreneurship, and just looking at how you can combine, commercial propositions and long-term development objectives, together, which I think is so important for Africa, so important for the continent. And so it's in my DNA somehow. I don't know where it comes from, but I always seem to go back to that no matter where I am. And it's like a marble on a salad bowl, it always comes down to the same place wherever you put it. It's very much like that. So thanks very much, Murray. I mean, I suppose maybe just to start, perhaps I'll just do a bit of a background on myself to flesh that out. So okay, so as I say, I've spent the last 25 years doing it. My first job on this, and I'll just sketch maybe a couple of things that I've done up till now, and then come to maybe the core points, which I'll talk to, because I really want to talk to some of the lessons I've learned over these 25 years.
Great.
And in terms of raising impact funding sustainably, but what these lessons are drawn on a number of experiences. So first, in my very first job, I was working, I was fortunate enough to be in the team that worked on corporate social investment. So it would be your what would be called your SRI funding. And so under the social responsible investment programs, it was one of those things that South Africa was a leader in that development in that field. And the reason is the first screening of funds that were happening were they were trying to stop investment into apartheid. And that is why they were looking at, how can money which is flowing be seen to or checked as to whether or not it's going to support good things or bad things. And so that's my first experience was with a thing called the Community Growth Fund, which was one of the first big SRI funds globally. And a number of those funds came out of South Africa. And so just for the people who are actually dealing with the slide, I'm going to come to that in a minute. Just give me a couple of minutes, maybe just to sketch some of the background before we go into those lessons. So having worked with these SRI funds, I think that is really the grounding for what today we call impact funding. So impact funding today is an evolution on the SRI funding that was starting in the 1990s. So fortunately for me, I was very much part of that, and then that is how I ended up at Harvard, and I ended up at the Kennedy School, Murray and Khalid,
Yeah.
and which was great fun, and did my MPA there. And I spent a lot of time at the Hauser Center, uh,
Wow, wonderful.
which exactly. And if you want to be a billionaire, now I know you did this, Murray, but if you want to be a billionaire, in my view, you should go to Harvard Business School. That's where you really, if you want to be, a full-on VC and commercial person. Although you can still do the good route that you did, but if you want to have more impact, probably Kennedy School and the other schools are quite good there. So I took the non-billionaire route. Uh, I still hope one day impact and billionaires might go together, but maybe I'll just have to accept the fact that one has a very fulfilling life doing impact work anyway. But what I found at the Hauser Center and the Kennedy School was how, so looking at a lot of the theory of fundraising, but by then I was doing a lot of the practitioner work in fundraising. So it was nice to put it all together and see how essentially it works. And when I left Harvard, uh, I then went to the public sector. And in the public sector, I was coordinating a thing called the economic cluster within the government, within the public sector. And the good thing about that, it gave me a lot of exposure to all the donor funds, because the way it works is all the donors bring their work, their funding towards normally the National Treasury or the
Mm-hmm.
finance team of government, and they manage it through that. So think of DFID from the UK, and then USAID was giving money, USAID or the Germans, GIZ, and so on. And then I was responsible for putting together a $250 million pool of donor money that would then be funding pilot projects or prototypes that could be long-term impactful. Let's pool all the money together and it'll back good things in education, health, climate change. So that was really spending time with donor money, which was good because donors, as you know, are important in our ecosystem. And then, as you said, I spent some time in the Development Bank for Southern Africa. And one of my favorite things I did there was we set up the Green Fund. And there again, the country was, and the continent now is doing so much of renewables. But
Yeah.
if you're going to do wind power, where do the blades come from? And the parts of the wind turbines come from? You want to do as much of that locally as possible. You don't just want to buy it from China. You want to make sure over time, so you'll start buying it from China, but over time you'll have to start having local businesses that can make it, local suppliers. You want to make, an export industry out of solving these problems. And in these last few years, I've spent a lot of time with the private sector.
Okay.
And I ran a program. Many of you online would be familiar with Demo Africa, which
Wow.
was where you would do like the Dragon's Den for new companies out of Africa, and you really the dragons are all the VCs, which might be local, but also global bodies. And how do
Mm.
VCs interact with the new companies that are trying to do those things? And then finally, I ended up now running this big program for the private sector, which is, as you mentioned, raise a lot of money from corporates, and then we also fund social entrepreneurs in key sectors to do things that are pro youth employment and so on. So I've had a lot of time to think about what I would do differently if I had to start again. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always a question when we sit in groups like this. We do things that are successful, and everyone on this call, I imagine, if you're Harvard alumni, you've done something to get there, but we also learn as we go. And I'm trying to adopt a lot of these things in how I now do things differently from when I started. But I wish 25 years ago when I was starting, those were some of the things. So I think the points I'm going to make now will be quite relevant if you're doing impact fund raising or social entrepreneurship programs. But even if you're doing VC work, I think a lot of what even commercial venture capital have to do will be some of the same things, which you'd need even if you're very purpose-driven social impact or impact funding. And the first point, the first lesson, I put it together in like seven lessons, seven things which I think are very important. And the first is, and this is probably the most important in whatever you're doing. And I know there'll be people who say, "Oh well, believe in your purpose. Purpose. It sounds so obviously you must believe in your purpose, but not everyone's going to be lucky enough to have a job they fully believe in." you know. But I think, look, let's face it, if you're in Harvard, you went through Harvard, you are one of the more privileged people. You have more opportunity to do the thing you really believe in and make it matter, right? So this is targeting people who are going to be raising money. So already you in a particular privileged group where you can do more.
Okay.
And therefore, I think what I found throughout is if someone who is pitching for funding or whatever it is that on your business, you are selling, right? Everyone, you have to be a salesperson. Even Nelson Mandela was a salesman, right? Because and you're selling an idea, you're selling yourself, you're selling your good, your product, your goods or services, and you have to. And it's going to be when you're raising money, it's going to take years when no one is going to be funding you in the way you want, and you have to continue to do it. And the people you're pitching to must perceive that you will do it even in the dark days. You're not just going to leave it at the first opportunity. So one of the key things is if you really must be doing the thing that you really believe in, and even within whatever that enterprise is, you're finding those things that are really motivating for you. And I think it comes through so strongly when people are raising money. The people who are true believers in their purpose, you know, um, whether it's a commercial or something that is just education or health, absolutely crucial that you can convey that conviction going through. And I think in terms of believing your purpose and knowing your outcome, how that connects. So when Yes now raises money, we would be considered a late stage enterprise, right? Because it's been going for a number of years. I know we're going to raise 3 billion or $170 million, $200 million. We know we're going to raise that. We are being assessed. Our outcome is we want to scale that further. So we have to uh, so we are showcasing our track record. But when you are a newer venture, you are selling hope because you don't have the track record in the venture. So
Yeah.
then it becomes very important that you are extra motivated because you are convincing someone as to why they should support you. As an early stage, it becomes very important. Later stage, you still you can trade more on your track record. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson I want to highlight that I think is very important is how you understand how the money flows in your ecosystem. Because when you're raising money, all of us work in an ecosystem with a food chain for money. There are certain type of people who successfully found ventures, and then there are people who fund them. And you need to
Mhm.
understand the relationship between the founders and the funders. And it's similar in most places. There might be differences, but you have to understand how that is. So in most places, I mean, you've got the government, you've got the public sector, you've got the DFIs who are funding, corporates fund VCs. You have corporate ventures, you've got corporate CSI, you've got VC funds, you've got funder funds, you've got family foundations, you've got a lot
Mhm.
of high net worth individuals, which we used to see a lot in Demo Africa, and all of it. So you need to know how does the money typically flow, who supports who. Now, let me share a little story with you. I had to do some work with one of the biggest asset managers in Africa.
Okay.
Um, it's a 2 trillion rand organization. I think it's 2.5 trillion rand now. Public Investment Corporation in South Africa. All the pension funds give them their money, and then they invest it like a big asset manager. 2.5 trillion rand that's a lot. I mean, that's over. I don't know. That's definitely probably 100 and something billion dollars.
Yeah.
And what I was looking at is who funds who are the founders who are raising money successfully and who is funding them. And in short, the what we picked up is that the same person was successfully founding about 2 or 3 businesses. They were serial entrepreneurs. They are founding a business and raising money. Then they go do the next one and the next one. So that's not a huge surprise, but it's interesting to see. But also the same people were funding them. So someone funds their first venture, maybe not so much the second, but funds their third. Someone funds the second venture, maybe the third, but the same people.
Oh.
Okay, so there's a network. And also, what is interesting is the person who founded that business, which has done well, then is also a funder themselves. And they fund the funder when the funder sets up his business or her business. And like, oh, so the founders and the funders are interchanging with each other and
Mm-hmm.
they're funding each other. And it's like a club, it's a network, right? So it's not a marketplace of funding, it's very much a network. And I think it's the same in most jurisdictions. It's a small community. The funders all know each other quite well. So that means relationships are very important. And when I started, the mistake I might have made, if you had asked me, is I spent a lot of time trying to get the content perfect and trying to get the proposition right. And I didn't always appreciate how important the relationships part are. The funders need to know you, and they're all part of the same club. So that's the thing. You need to understand how that flows because you are somewhere in that, and you need to know who's who in that zoo. The third lesson would be that there is a cycle to how long it takes to raise money, and you have to know how you're going to fund yourself. So the typical funding cycle is about 12 to 24 months when people need to, so they have this, they want to go and raise money, but before they can get the final money, it's about 24 months, which means they're going a year or 2 years without a salary. Now you're coming from a background, you've been to Harvard, whatever it is, now you're raising money and you're going to have 2 years, and who's going to pay you in those 2 years? Right. And everyone will tell you textbook, follow your dream, do all those exciting things. Like, oh, let's do it. Let's do it. Well, you know what? Guess what? Most of the people who raise money are already rich. So they can fund themselves. People say, oh, right, it takes 2 years. We will just, have coffee at coffee shops and meet clever people. And it's like, and I'm like, okay, but you have a lot of family money, my friend. So you can do that very comfortably. So that's the one. Or you've exited another business, you've got some money, you've got big boat, you got your own money. Or the second thing you find is the person will have friends and family who can cover them, and that's the third, which I think many of us might be in that boat if you're not coming from family money, is that you partner with an organization that can take you under their wing, and it's almost like a JV. But your
Mm-hmm.
first fund, your first program, you want while you're fundraising, someone will cover your costs, almost incubate you, and so
Yeah.
I believe in you. Let me support you. So even Yes, which is now raising billions and billions, and it's really the biggest jobs program in Africa. I think globally, funded fully by the private sector. For the first 2 years, a bank took it under its wing. And the bank said, all right, we will cover you with 6 staff and you will and we will support you. And we'll write it up in the bank as our social impact investment. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't pay, we will cover it, but we'll incubate you for 2 years. And that made such a huge difference. You could have a team that went out. To do it on your own, to set up an organization that's going to scale fast is quite difficult. The challenge I found with people who haven't done this, they run out of money just before the funding comes through. They just can't afford to do it anymore, you know? So they run out of money 6 months before the 2 years, and then they're not there when the funding is going to come through. Or they look desperate. And you're running out of money and you're going to funders looking desperate. It's not a good look. And is bad. So I think you've got to really think about how to do funding. I would suggest a lot, unless you've got your own money, think about partnerships that will support you. The fourth thing now I think is also very, very important that I've found is that you have to research your potential funders and how to solve their problem. So let me give you an example of this because funding partners especially if it's like a VC type thing where they're buying a stake in your business, but even a fund that's going to be with you for a number of years, that is often, as long as it's longer than some people are married. Your relationship with your funder can be longer than some people are married.
Yeah.
And so it's like you picking a marriage partner. You're not going to just join with anybody, right? So the
Mm.
potential funders and how you select them become very important. So you now with done some general research, you've identified the funders that seem perfect for you, right? Maybe from that ecosystem, and just a quick search. But now you must go deeper into it, right? There's a lot of potential funders. Who are you going to really approach? Because you need to approach them in a very considered way. So you would get references. You'll ask people who have been funded by them in the past, uh, what was that like? You will do some digging. You'll go to some of the databases. Some of the best databases are the GIN database, Global Impact Investment Network. And if you're doing VC work, it's called Crunchbase, that I used to use Crunchbase. You get a lot of information on that. Then you're narrowing it down, and then you're going to go to LinkedIn. So typically now we would go to LinkedIn. We'll look at who the funders are, what they say, in this how they run this company, their funding company, how they process the money, what seem to be the main criteria, and very importantly, what seem to be the problems that they are trying to solve. What are the problems they're trying to solve for? And now you're trying to say, okay, so if I pitch to that funder for my idea, I'll have to angle it and put it in a particular way because I'm really solving their problem. And they'll be thanking the good Lord that I came along because I've got exactly the angle that is going to work for them. You also have to know, I would say, that what is the style of that funder. So you would find some funders we would pitch to, they are very much wanting to be the leaders. They want to be the first. They want to be the firstest to do something. You say, okay, so now they're quite brave. Others just want to follow. So you'd pitch it a little bit differently because they don't want to be the first. They want to know other people out there already. And there's a category of funders where they actually appear to be funders, but you'll only know later on they're not really funders because they fund closed. They don't have a fund anymore. Maybe they're waiting for their next funding to be raised where they go out to. And that can be a little bit misleading because you're talking to someone who's not a funder, but they could still be helpful in networking and advice. So that's what I would say in terms of very important to the research on your potential funders. Fifth lesson is really around how you. So when you go on the fundraising, and it's so important, we find it all the time that people don't have their documents in place. So when you hit the fundraising trail, as it were, you must have everything ready, right? So that includes your legal documents and
Mm.
your tax compliance, and do you have your audited financial statements and so on? Because you're gonna now meet someone at a cocktail party, at an event, and you really convince this person at over the canapes and the champagne that your vision is really great and the idea is brilliant, it's perfect for them, all of that. And then they say to you, great, can you send me something? And then you better have some stuff ready.
Yeah.
And typically they'll say, oh, have that blurb or the two-pager. That's fine because you've already got that part done, no doubt. But you will you will need then to know already that you are compliant from a legal point of view, right? Are your tax issues in order? If they're meeting their CFO, they'll want to look at some of your financials and so on. So you don't want big delays because you haven't got that part ready. And then what happens is by the time you give it to them, they've forgotten about you. 1 month later, they're forgotten. You got to give it to them the same day, pretty much. And if you don't, then in a way you might have burnt that bridge because you already went to them, they asked for some stuff, you weren't ready. Now it becomes a bit awkward to go again. So I think always good to have that there in place. The sixth lesson I would say that's very important And certainly it's become and we spend a lot of time on that now because of the networking part of it is that you got to have a board that is very credible and can help you network. Because if so much it is about networks, you need people who know those people and people who funders like and trust. So some of them should be with you because you won't know all those people or they won't know you. So the funder would typically be not wanting to see you as a sole proprietor, as a single founder. They want to know who's on your board, and just from a governance point of view. And you would also want board members who can, whose reputation you could leverage, and they have their own track record, and they can make phone calls for you. They can
Mhm.
mediate, and so on. So it becomes very important. Again, a board is exactly like long-term funders. There is a whole theory around how you would structure that because again, you pick the wrong board members, you could have big problems. But a board is without doubt massively important to get the right board. So at this point, let me just say before I come to the last point is you've got a really good purpose. You've located your funding proposal at the right spot for this funder, whom you've researched really well. You've pitched it. You've got your documents, your board's in place. They're even giving you the money, right? And that's why in this topic I was saying, raising money sustainably in Africa, because you can raise money once, but the seventh lesson is really about how you make it sustainable, right? And the point I'll just make here is that the fundraising is not a one round game.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
game theory, it's a multi-round game because the first time they give you money, if you promise you're going to do 10 of something and you end up doing four, well, now you've disappointed them, right? But if you
Definitely.
promised 10 and you did 12, now you've exceeded expectations. Now you've made them look good. Even more, what will happen? They will tell their other funded friends. So if you
Yeah.
fail up front, then your reputation becomes bad. If you succeed up front, your reputation becomes good. So I think you really have to think about uh, you know the actual performance becomes very important in how you manage yourself and the reputation. So, because then you have repeat funders, and that's how you can now build because you need those funders to come back year after year. So typically we'll have funders now where in terms of the Yes program, have been with us 5, 6 years, and each year they're funding more. And that's what you want. And they kind of are a net promoter for you with their peer group. So those are some of the lessons I just think are very important for me, certainly, and I thought I'll share with all of you. So, Miriam, thank you very much, and let me hand back to you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Amazing lessons and incredible and insightful journey. We really appreciate you sharing those lessons with us. I think we learned a lot through your keynotes. And now we will move to the Q&A session where I will ask a few questions from my side and also try to balance with the audience questions that have been voted. So let's go straight. Ravi, first question from my side. Based on your experience, for founders with traction who haven't raised from bigger founders yet, what should they fix first to be taken seriously? I know you touch base on this, but I want you to go a bit deep so that our audience can really learn and be able to follow your path. Thank you.
Yes. So the question you're asking is for people who are just starting and they haven't got the big funders yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. No, so I would say, and I, and obviously with the Harvard team, we meet a lot of people who are running these big philanthropic programs, and I was chatting to one of them recently who runs the big program for East Asia, and you know, so the rule of thumb is you don't really ask for money until the third meeting. So the thing you're fixing is, do you have, just having being able to sit down, listen to funders, have those relationships, understanding how to position uh, what you're asking for with what they want to support. So you understand the problem that you're solving. So I think, to me, I would say, everyone in this room would be good, technically good at the thing that they have been doing, right? You are an expert at the thing that you've worked on. So your technical competence is probably without question. The the funding part now is, who knows that? Who knows that about you? You know, your mother knows,
Exactly.
but who knows that about you from the funding community? And they say, Mariam she's got really good ideas. You know that, Andy? And Andy says to the other person, that is very true. And I'm very interested. So you got to get that part. So I do think we definitely need to spend a bit of time on getting those relationships built. I would invest in that. If you really consider yourself to be technically good and you've got a technically good proposition, now you have to get it to fit the right uh, funding environment.
Environment. Incredible. And I think it's very, very interesting to know, because sometimes you just think, when I have a nice idea, then I can go and raise money and so on. While you never got the chance to do that, it's always important to hear such story, such journey, and be able to figure out and fix the basics before moving to that step. Thank you, Ravi. That's very helpful. Now let's look at what happens when founders begin to grow. So moving from pilot to real scale, what kind of funding mix has worked best in your experience, and why?
Yeah. Yes. So one of the things is, when you're starting, and we see this all the time, and some of these are my best friends, and they're very, very motivational speakers, and they're so motivational, and they're starting, like I say, it's like hope. And everyone's like, oh wow, what a vision! Speaks so well, you know. Uh, Now you can do that when you're starting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people be like, wow. Now you are scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
Scaling up means you finish the pilot stage.
Yeah.
The pilot stage was when you do proof of concept and all of that. Now, I don't want you to give me a long speech. Now I want you to tell me what you've done. Now the conversation is different. Now you're not talking about what you're going to do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was before. Before, you were telling what you're going to do. It's like, okay, sounds nice. Now you're telling me what you did. So how is that track record looking? What is measurable? What can be validated by someone else, not just you saying it's great? But if I want to validate that in fact it's happened, where is that data from? Which trustworthy sources says, no, no, that pilot mostly works, or that thing they can now go forward. So that is the issue, is now the conversation is different. If you're still telling people what you're going to do, and you can't tell them what you've done, you're in a difficult position. So I think uh, that part of the conversation must be prepared for. Even though obviously things failed here and there because it's a pilot, or it's early stage. If he said everything was a total success, then he must be a complete genius, or it's a miracle in an early stage. Something must have gone. You must have learned something from something that's gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, the part that's worked, now you can show that you're now ready for that next stage, and you would now have to bring proof of success somewhere, um, and then the conversation is based on that. That's I think uh, that would be the best approach.
Perfect. So, Ravi, let's assume that I figure out how to convince, how to prove that I'm a credible entrepreneur and my concept is working perfectly well. So the question is, what type of funding mix? Should I go to VCs? Should I go to angel investors? Should I go to family funding? What type of funding mix I should prioritize? And based on your experience, that will work and why it will work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's very different depending what you're trying to do. Obviously, you want the best terms financially for the thing you're doing. So if someone is prepared to give you grant money,
Mm-hmm.
you should take as much as you can.
Yeah.
If they're giving you funding that is you know a loan that is not secured against anything personal like a house, but just secured against, you're buying tractors and the loan is only secured against the tractors. That's nice. So you're not taking any personal risk. Firstly, you don't want to put your house up as security or your personal properties for anything you're starting with, because then you have a good chance you might lose it. You don't want that, right? So, but I think if you're doing a social impact venture, obviously you want as much grant money and concessional money as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
then if you're doing something where you want, let's say you're trying to sell health or medical devices into the market, and there's a particularly big company in that market that is a buyer.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt for you to have a financial arrangement with them where they are also investing a little bit in you, because now they are wanting you to succeed, right?
Definitely.
So in that case, you don't want it to only be grants and all of that. So you want them to also have some skin in the game with you, because now it helps you, right? So I think even from an impact point of view, you do want to rope in your partners in to have a shared interest in your success if they're the client. Because the biggest problem you have when you're doing any of these things is what we'll call market access, right? Who's going to buy this thing? Everyone gets trained from here till month of Sundays, and startup money and all, but then they all have no customers. So if you can find a way to connect it to customers financially, then at least that's now you're trading. And well,
Definitely.
and obviously, if you're doing a more like a VC type thing, like you who go to Harvard Business School, uh, then it's a different type of term sheet, because I mean, obviously, then it'll be structured a little bit differently. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, because then now you're giving shares in businesses and in the business, and it's a different. Then it's about money and control come together, right? Because the investor now wants control over something. They're buying a stake in the business, so
Mm-hmm.
that you think that's a different type of how much control would you give for how much money. But I think from an impact point of view, you want a mix where you do want a lot of grant money, because you need that's your shock absorber, but then a part of it is more like strategic, where you want certain role players to be invested, even if it's not grant related money.
Thank you very much. I think your answer is great and cover the expectation, because it's always good to know how, based on your expectation, how you can, mix the different type of funds that you are looking for, so that you don't lose control of your business, right? This side is very important, and I think this in the continents, based on my experience, we have to educate more and more entrepreneurs about that. Now, let me take one question from our audience before I continue. There is Emmanuel asking, what emerging trends or sectors across Africa excite you most? And what should the fellow entrepreneurs or investors understand about the real opportunity and common misconception on the continent?
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, I think Do you remember when COVID happened?
Yeah.
And then you saw the difference in the world when the chips are down, how countries reacted, who took the vaccines for themselves first, and he said only when everyone's got it here we'll give some
Yeah.
away to you people. Yeah, and
It's-
Canada had 6 vaccines for every person, and Africa had maybe 6 for every 100 people, and we had to wait. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah. So
Ravi.
the same thing will happen in green technology. It'll
Mm-hmm.
happen in biosciences,
Wow.
like COVID vaccine. It'll happen in AI, all of those things. So it becomes very important from a continental point of view, if we talk about impact, how we promote those businesses and industries to grow here, right? Because then you want to say, are they green, renewable power industries that are growing here? What technology type businesses are going to grow and out of Africa and stay in our biosciences? Um, we probably have a lot of opportunities for things they call base of pyramid.
Yeah.
Base of pyramid will be where people are trading on their cell phones, but then
Yeah.
the cell phone means you have data, and the data means I know how much money you're making, so I can give you a loan even though I'm not a bank. Because I don't even need your financial statements because I can
Yeah.
see all your trades on the
Great.
phone, and my
Mm-hmm.
algorithm tells me, no, no, I can give her a loan of $25,000 because she can pay it back. She's doing the, and you don't even have to come to the bank to deposit it. I'll take it off the app. You won't even know you're paying it back.
Yeah.
And so that would be, for example, non-banking financial institutions. Africa could be one of the leaders, and you need them all around the world. Bangladesh, Brazil, everywhere. There's a huge market. Anyway, so all those things uh, are sectors where you want to encourage business, because those are not just good businesses, which we'll need for the future, but strategic from a continental point of view. So if I was the AFDB, the African Development Bank, I would be promoting those sectors. And then I'm coming to the funding part where I want to know, if I fund these people, how do I know they're going to stay here and they're not going to take it all and sell it to the first American and Canadian they find? Because we need some of that here. So that becomes a strategic issue going forward.
Mm-hmm.
All of us,
Great. Thank you so much. I hope, Emmanuel, you get clarity on this one. And for time purpose, I will take another question from the Q&A. There is Ronewa asking, as a new NPO still building credibility, how can we practically balance the need to fund our operations while proving our impact to attract long-term sustainable funding partners?
yeah. Yes, so they are building their credibility,
Yeah.
right? And they need to get funding while they're building their credibility. Yeah, and
Maybe they're still at the pilot stage.
they're still at the pilot stage. Yeah. So if you're building credibility, I mean, what is credibility based on? It's based on people who are important and knowledgeable, taking you uh, seriously, right? And and that means that it's not the scale of the thing you're doing, it's the fact that whatever it is you're doing, even if it's at a small scale, people are learning to trust that if you said you're going to do something, you did it, right? So even if you had a modest target but you met it, then that's going to help you, because now you it's an achievement. So I think that becomes important. The point. So we sit with a lot of very senior people on our board, and I have to say I find it very interesting, because sometimes it's like, aha, I never thought of that. I wish I had someone told me that. And we often in a situation where we're trying to do something very fast, like we want to scale up very, very, very fast. It's like exponential growth. And most of the successful businesses we work with, the big corporates, the global ones out of South Africa, most of them have grown incrementally, even post 1994, after apartheid. They didn't necessarily grow out of apartheid, they came after apartheid. But it's the value of growing incrementally. So that is a better way to go than trying to be an overnight superstar, which almost never happens and usually gets you
Mhm.
into big trouble. So that comes down
Mhm.
to, you have a much more measured plan because if people come along with you and you don't shock them with bad news or good news. You're not volatile. They look
Mhm.
at you as someone they can work with over the long period. So I think if you're building credibility as NPO, you are a non-scandal organization that whatever you do, you're doing it well, and they know they put money with you. You've got a good board, you've got some board members that everyone likes. The board members are not conflicted, very important. You know, board members have other lives, so you have to make sure you manage the board members. And no, 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 this is, you know, so you just have to make sure all of that is happening. And then long-term sustainable funding, yeah. So that's you're really looking at a very well managed incremental growth model. And if you're lucky enough to meet a funder who says, here, so many $1 million, you know, I really like you, then good for you. But you don't plan for that.
Yeah.
You're controlling your. So the thing here, I would say, I would do if I was on their board, I would say we can't always control how much money we get in, but we can control our own costs. So you want to demonstrate to the funder that the things you can control, you're controlling it well. There's no crazy stuff. If I go to Mariam, if I go to your business, I would say, okay, we'll do something with you. If I pay for one, will you, you'll have to find some 1 + 1 = 3 arrangement with other partners. And everyone sees this and they say, like we had a fund that came to us, and for every $1 he gives us, I
Mhm.
find another $3. And he goes, claims the whole $4 to his board. And so you got to find a way to do that. And now they're putting in much more money. So I think that builds up over time, and yeah, and that person is a very senior person, and now he is like my main cheerleader with his friends, and so it's very helpful. But it did take 3 years to get
Wow.
him. But the first time, I'll say 3 years ago, he wasn't a fan. He was like, I don't know what you're on about.
Wow.
But eventually joined, and then they now I can't get him to stop talking. I have
Very
to tell him, please stop
insightful.
talking.
Very insightful. Thank you very much, Ravi, for sharing. There is a lot of question coming in the chat. Let me follow with another one from Diana. She's still in Mozambique. She's saying, dear Ravi, what indicators or outcomes are investors paying most attention to when assessing social enterprises, tackling gender equality, and CRHR in Africa? What evidence tend to move the needle for follow-on funding?
Yeah. Now, I have to confess, I don't know what SRHR is. Oh,
Maybe,
I see. Oh, she's explained this sexual reproduction health. Okay. And I suppose the other R is
yeah,
rights. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. So, yeah, so what do you pay attention to in with gender? Now, I will try to answer that question, knowing that my wife will probably tell me I'm the worst person to answer this question. But I do know that one of the things is if you are breaking glass ceilings, right? And if you want to have transformation, so certainly in anything to do with jobs, for example, you're looking at uh, do women do non-traditional work? So, for example, if a woman was a manager of a mine or construction company, you might find more women doing other work in mining and construction companies. right? Because they would open doors. So one
Yeah.
of the things, it's not just whether there is a woman doing the normal work you expect a woman to do in a mine, be the health officer or something. You would get women deeper into the industry from a management or control point of view once you have, managers who are women in a otherwise male-dominated industry. They open doors. So I think if a fund is looking for something that is transformative, that would be more interesting to them. So we're running a jobs program through the continent with a funder, and one of the things is women in non-traditional roles, right? Because that implies over the long term that industry is going to start to change as more women become, like a woman CEO of a mine. You already see it in South Africa. They create more opportunities for other women most of the time, not always, but most of the time.
Yeah.
So you got to say what would break uh, the negative mold? How is that being funded? So you have to have evidence for did that really happen? Yeah, so I would say that would be, the kind of things you'd have to look at.
Look at. Sure. Very important. Thank you, Ravi, for sharing your perspective on this one. I think Diana is still asking another question, saying you mentioned the importance of raising grants funding as a shock absorber. In my case, as a CEO focused on sales, my board often worries that chasing grants take me away from revenue. But grants are key for us. They fund education and demand generation, which ultimately drives sales. How do you think a CEO should balance both? Should I personally lead on grants or bring someone into handle that? And how will you suggest I frame this to my board so they see it as part of a growth strategy, not a distraction?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, the bad news here is I would more agree with the board. So, in the sense that no, it's not, let me explain. Because obviously, in the end, if it's the business needs to run on what on sales ultimately. Because if you have customers who are prepared to pay their own money, that's a good sign. Right? The
Mhm.
danger of being dependent on grants is that you don't know if the recipient really values the thing that you're doing. Because the target market person has got money, but they're spending it on Coca-Cola or they're spending it on something else we don't know. So so the question is, and if, for example, it needs to be subsidized, like healthcare, because it's quite expensive for something. I mean, healthcare might be a bit of a difficult one, but you expect someone to at least make a co-payment towards it to show that they are prepared to put something. So I think you do want to keep, depending on the nature of the business, actual paying customers as a very important metric as to whether people really value what you're providing. Now, obviously, every one of us on this call loves grant money because it often is unencumbered money in a sense, like it's almost free money. So we just have to make sure we're not using it like a crutch to cover up a weakness in the actual thing we're doing. So, the person doesn't value it properly, so they're not really paying even though they could, so we'll pay for grants. So it's like I'm doing them a favor. So the real beneficiary in that business is me as the provider,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, so you've got to be careful then with your own analysis, that's not what's happening. You're using the grant as non-core activities to build something up. So you got grants that say, okay, now in the long run, board, when I take this grant is going to build a brilliant tech system with data, which is going to lower our costs in the next 5 years. It means we're not going to pay for this and this and this and this because it's all going to be automated. Fantastic. I put a little AI thing there as well. So now there's no board in this right mind will say, no, no, don't build that. Because now you want it, the grant money is for that. it's like a once-off big project and it'll reduce the cost structure. Or it's a big, you're going to use it for a big marketing campaign. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
lock in a lot of customers. Again, it's not bringing down costs, but it could boost revenue. So the grant should be for those special business building things. It should not be, I would say, to substitute for where a customer can pay and should pay. I mean, obviously, if you're doing healthcare, for example, some of that should be free. So if you're being funded to do a thing like that, then yeah, then you'll say, as long as I have a grant, I can service that type of customer because they shouldn't be expected to pay. But when the grant is cut, then what's going to happen? That customer base has to be cancelled.
Yeah.
So as long
Yeah.
as you know that where it's going and when the grant goes, because what we found, so many people depend on the US aid, right? There were US aid in South Africa is not a big funder, but they had some projects. And there were organizations which were entirely dependent on US aid. And when USA just went overnight, they closed. So in a normal funding, if you work like a commercial funding, not normal funding, if you work commercial funding, your board will consider all those things concentration risks. And they'll never allow you to have so much dependence on one client or one source of funds, which could just overnight change. Because then that
Well,
means the whole business has got a sustainability risk. So they'll work out not more than X% of your money can come from the source. Because if that one goes off the rails, does it close down your business? So you would have to work out how much you can depend on grant money for a particular thing, and what happens if it's not there tomorrow. And yeah, and as so that's typically what you'd have to do. But grant money, if you can use it for like big projects, like once-off projects, then the board should give you a bonus.
great insights, I think, Ravi. Diana is saying she's happy and she's privileged to be part of this webinar and learn your perspective. Thank you so much for sharing. Let me now move to the next one. Beyond the storytelling, Ravi, and relationships, there's also the internal rigor piece that's an entrepreneur should look at, right? So let's talk now about governance and reporting. What are two simple changes to governance or reporting that make funders immediately more confident on a business model?
Yeah, okay. So that's going a little bit further away from for the raising of funds to just the running of the operations.
Yeah.
So the one thing that any funded wants, right, is a very strong finance reporting.
Okay.
So typically we find the post that and the role that is the most key support for a CEO is the CFO and the finance team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when they give you money, they want to know that money is going to go to the right place. Because the CEO, you're telling the story, you're selling hope, you're saying all these nice things, telling jokes and making friends with people. They want to know, but when the money goes is it going to be in the right account and not, I mean, everything is it's fully done because they can't have a
Yeah.
scandal on their side. And especially for, impact programs and we deal with Africa, foreigners have a perception that there's not good financial management or so
Mm,
you gotta counter that perception. And
okay.
therefore the finance team CFO role is important. And I'm
Okay.
prepared in my business to tolerate an irritating CFO if they do their job well. But then they must, because that is a very important part of governance because they're giving you money.
Mm-hmm.
And there can never be a problem with the money and anything is wrong. Because once you have a problem with money, I think is very important. The other thing, which is not the second thing, but I'll just add in, is they watch for anything that could be a scandal, you know, harassment, sexual harassment, all those things. You don't even think about it, but imagine you're a funder and you're now associated with an organization that's got a problem. You don't like that. So you got to, as a CEO, you have to make sure it's scandal free and the money it's always clean audits.
Clean. Okay.
Clean audits are very because remember, if other people are having problems around you, other organizations, and you don't, then you also stand out. So, and if you've got a good finance team, then you can also make sure you get, so let's say you get a grant, is the money invested correctly? Because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
earn interest off that. Then suddenly you keep that interest, put it aside, make sure your contract is good that says the interest accrues to me, not to the funder. And let's say you get $1 million. That could be a lot of money. You're not spending the money now, you want to earn some interest. Um, you don't want to put the money into cryptocurrencies because then you'll lose it all. So that's a good finance. So
Yeah.
you slowly build it up. I think that's the one thing. The other thing that is very important from a governance point of view, and that's is that you can monitor and evaluate your impact. Right. So a
Correct.
funder really wants a beautiful report with data, with like reliable data in it that shows the money there's an additionality to the money.
To the money.
They
Mm-hmm.
paid, and then previously before you, it's like a social return on impact. Even if you're a social entrepreneur, it's an SROI, which is harder to do than an ROI stuff, obviously, because now you're trying to show before the money landed, this was what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because of the funding, they can claim, so many more people went to school, or the education outcomes are now at the level of a private school,
Service.
but it's not a private school. And then they can work out in terms of money how much that is worth, right? So if you look at SROI, which I think we should probably even think of doing a seminar in our group, you can calculate it technically. How
Great.
much was this educational funding worth in terms of its impact? You could put a number to it. So then that makes they can go raise more money on their side. Because remember, the funder has to raise funding. Typically,
Yeah.
your funder has to go to family foundations or governments or whatever and raise their money um, from their board. So I think those are the things which the finance and then the performance metrics are important. I'll say the other thing that is important that they watch for is conflicts of interest in terms of the management and the board.
Okay.
So if you're a board member or CFO or CEO, you can't be self-trading. So they want to know that when they give you money, you didn't set up your own supplier. Yeah,
You
crazy
have to.
thing.
Yeah.
Or yeah, or you when you make a decision, it's in the best interest of the institution. There's nothing else getting in the way
Mm-hmm.
because uh, I mean all of those things cause problems for funders. And for
Definitely.
you, if you're running a business like that, it'll be crazy for you as a CEO. You wouldn't last very long. Uh,
Great, excellent feedback. I think you are very clear about that, and I totally agree. Your governance have to be right. Your reporting also align on the expectation, and be consistent in reporting what you commit for, and so on, so that you can show the impact you are having on grounds. One more question in the chat from Soraya Williams. Here, the corporate are eager for measurable impact and BBBEE alignment. How can we package the development of an incubation hub? We're raising funds for the economic and social outcome like job creation and enterprise development and youth empowerment to attack CSI investment into actual construction phase, not only into skills program after completion. Thank you.
right. So how would they build? This is an incubation program, and
Yeah.
when they're saying BBEE, for those who don't know, that is like a local ESG recognition program in South Africa. I think they've been
Okay.
doing. So, yeah, so South Africa has its own ESG, but it's like trying to undo apartheid ESG, but you get
Oh, okay.
recognized as you do it. So corporates can be recognized and given points if they are shown to be doing something that helps undo the damage of apartheid. And there's
Oh, okay.
different criteria. Donald
Yeah.
Trump hates it, I can tell you, but uh, uh, it is part of it's like a national DEI
Mm-mm. Mm. Okay.
strategy. So look, I would say I mean that's quite a specific set of things there, but if you were, for example, trying to do an incubator, now an incubator program is normally, if you did a physical incubator program, that means bricks and mortar. That means you're renting or building something. It's a lot of money. It's different if you're doing virtual things that happen in incubator, like I bring all the specialists and so on to help, but I'm not paying for the physical infrastructure. So a physical incubator does require quite a lot of capital expenditure that you have to raise from somewhere. So it's a more expensive exercise. Um, and I would suggest, and this would be like a general thing, is that you have to leverage. Again, if I talk about the $1 that makes $4 story I told earlier, is how do you leverage all the infrastructure that's already there, right? So in many countries, you'd find that there is often excess capacity, whether it's in IT or it's in buildings or something that is there. And that's why a lot of the business propositions coming through now are really around the concept of shared infrastructure, meaning I go and rent out at a discount your empty building or
Mm.
the empty off floor in your building. And you want to do it because you don't want to have an empty office. And right now, you as a landlord are paying the cost for an office space that is not used. So if I come to you and I say I want it for at a discounted price, you're probably going to be interested in giving it to me. So,
Mm.
so the one thing, if you were to do incubators and things like that, I would get a lot of uh, this through shared infrastructure to keep the cost very low. So the supply side costs are low. And then an incubator and a thing like that is typically trying to deliver, so you're trying to incubate someone for something. So in this case, you might be incubating people to start their business. A lot of incubators are for SMEs.
Mhm.
Right. And the biggest failure with all of these incubators um, is that they help people, but there's nowhere to go. So, it's a supply side intervention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So, like I said, you can train and train and do all of that, and then they have no one to sell to. So the whole thing is a waste. So the only people who benefit from that typically are the incubator companies. So your problem is on the demand side. So you ideally want to have the companies that say, okay, we are in the motor industry, and if you are incubating auto repair shop businesses, we will contract them.
Yeah.
So we will work with you. So you get the client to work with you uh, while you are building up your intermediary business. So while you're building up the incubator, the people who would buy the service from them are already with you. So they already say, okay. And when you incubate them, just make sure they all know how to do A, B, and C, because that's what we need. So, okay, cool.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that solves a big problem that everyone else can't solve, because everyone else gets funny if they go to all these foundations, they get money, and the biggest failure is all raise money and no one at the end got anything. Right. So you would now stand out as the one who solved that problem because you're the only one where when people come to you, they go somewhere at the end because they have customers. So you'd have to think about, I think in that case, in a very competitive market like that, how you would be distinctive. So I would
Hmm.
say if you're an incubator, but you'd be one of the few incubators that actually had clients already for the incubatees. So now you're looking to fill, that space. You're like, okay, because then you already know what you are training and developing people to achieve because they have to service the needs of those clients you already know. So you can sit down with the client like a dragon's den and say, okay, do you think Mariam can do the thing you want? They'll say, yeah, we like how she's progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're solving the problem of that company, because that problem is they don't have a supplier that they like in that whatever field. So I'll give you an example. In that case of the insurance of the motor industry, insurance companies love to have auto repair shops that can fix cars very cheaply. And the only cars they can do that are the ones which are essentially out of warranty cars. So there's a particular market where insurance companies don't want to use the big expensive repair shops.
Mm-hmm.
They say, no, 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 that's an old car. That owner's happy to, get it done without all the fancy legal stuff. So that will be a step down facility. For them, it's worth a lot of money for the insurance company. So you kind of have to work out then as an incubator what problem you're solving. Yeah, so I think
Exactly.
that's the way to do it, and then people will fund it. It's
I'll
easy.
come to the impact you are creating on ground, right? Thank you very much, Ravi. I think for time purpose, we will move to one more questions for today's session.
Yeah.
And this will be from me, Ravi. I mean, one strategic question, which is more about who we choose to partner with, because I mean, not all capital is equal, right? Are there either any type of funders that entrepreneur in this continent should be extra careful about engaging with, based on your experience?
Yeah, yeah. That's a hot question to end with, Mario. Because aren't all funders ones you should just hug and kiss? And I think the answer is no. Actually, the answer is no. So the first type of funder I said you must be careful about, which is not saying they're a bad funder, but you have to be
Mm-hmm.
careful, is a funder that has no money. Because, when you look at funding and foundations, the same thing, they had money and now the fund is closed. But they still have funder on their logo. It's something, something fund. But the fund they raised is now finished. And
Okay.
now they're going around trying to get money for their next fund. So when they speak to you, it still says funder something on their card, but they don't have any money. So you must know, do they actually have an active fund or not? Because if they haven't got an extra fund, you might spend a lot of time with them, and then in the end, you're not going to get anything. Remember, they're still employed, so they must do their job. So they're meeting people who maybe in the future they'll do something with, or maybe their fund is just winding down. So
But Ravi, as an entrepreneur, how can I know this? How can I figure out to know if they have active fund
yeah,
or not?
yeah. So look, I mean, initially you won't really know very easy because you're going to meet them at a reception. Someone's going to say, "Oh, and they have some of them are famous organizations." So you'll pick up in the media they haven't their fund is closed because normally when they raise a fund, there'll be some publicity about, you know, Ford Foundation is funding such and such. All right.
Okay.
Or Ford Foundation's grants have now been closed because something happened, or this Acumen fund has just raised their third fund for something something in West
Okay.
Africa.
Okay.
You can do a little bit of research, but
Yeah.
often you won't really know because many of them will have multiple funds at the same time. But some of those might not be closed. You'll have to work out, and that's why it's not a one-way street. They're not interviewing you only. You are also interviewing them. So you are also trying to work out. Very nice title you got, but tell me. Let's talk about who you're funding at the moment. So I don't know. So I think there is that, which is just due diligence from your own point.
Yeah.
The point about from a continental point of view, let me just say, which I discovered in some programs, and I was like, oh wow, I hadn't thought about it but that's not so good. What you find a lot of, the world is competing for skills,
Okay.
talented people. All our Harvard alumni and other universities we won't talk about, but nice alumni, and the world is competing for talent, and they're competing for IP, intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the funders are coming to these events, they come and see you and you're pitching your idea. They don't really want your idea or that person. They're not interested in that business so much. they want that person to come and join their company in America.
Mm.
They're looking for talent. It's like you're
Okay.
coming to take talent out of Africa and take it back. Now, okay, it's a global world. If you're going to go work in London and New York and all that's fine, because sometimes people go there and they come back. It's
Mm-hmm.
nice. Now you've worked in New York. I don't know how many people come back, but I'm sure a lot of people do come back, and that's okay. But as a business model from a continent, you don't want to lose your talent to people to go and live and work there and permanently. The other
Definitely.
thing linked to this is they look at your ideas. Oh, very nice idea. This thing about using cell phones to connect to banking, and you can do it so cheaply and so quickly. It will be a new bank. Oh, I think we'll make it out of America now. Because then how will the African bank start like that? So where they're coming to only extract people and extract intellectual property, that is an extractive model which can go against trying to build local capacity. Right? At
Okay.
some point, you have to have some of these companies start, and their headquarters is in Nairobi or in Accra or in Johannesburg or Cairo, or whatever. And that's the headquarters, and that's the main operations. It can't only be, oh, they found him in Nairobi and now he works out of New York and he helps a New York company registered in Delaware with something and they're selling it back to Africa at 5 times the price. But all the profits go to America. But he was born in Africa. I don't know. I mean, that's okay. That's a half good story. So I think that is from an individual point of view, of course, I mean, people will take the offer, but I think as a network, it's not a great thing from a Harvard alumni entrepreneur Africa chapter, uh, if that's the only model. So one of our things will be how do we try to get some of the African skills and IP to also build Africa? That's
Africa,
that's one of our
absolutely.
long-term goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ravi, for those thoughtful responses. And I also want to thank each and everyone for the excellent questions. I think we learned a lot. And again, we are very delighted to spend those minutes and with Ravi on this subject. So before we close, here are 3 key takeaways from today's conversation. The first one is clarity. I can say clarity builds fundability. Be precise in your narrative and your numbers, as Ravi mentioned to it. It's very important. The second element is partnership amplify impact. Capital is important, but alignment is transformative. We have to be aware about that and very intentional on this. And finally, governance builds trust. Even a small improvement in reporting by implementing a dashboard or whatever it is can unlock opportunities for funding. Thank you again, Ravi, for sharing that with us. And we will continue to interact with you and keep learning. As I said, I'm very inspired by your journey, and we hope as Harvard alumni to continue adding our piece into building a great future for Africa. And together we can do it. Thank you so much.
All right.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Thank you, Mariam, for moderating. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, to continue the conversation and stay informed about upcoming founder focus session, please follow us on LinkedIn, Harvard Alumni Entrepreneur Global Network, and HAE Africa chapter as well. And of course, follow Yes and Ravi on LinkedIn for ongoing insight and opportunities to collaborate. Ladies and gentlemen, to allow us continue to provide you a best-in-class webinar series, we are inviting you to take this small poll from our technical team so that we could learn and continue to improve ourselves. And we warmly encourage you to become a member of HAE Africa, and the process is quite very simple. You can send us a direct message on HAE LinkedIn page or complete the membership interest form available there. Once we receive your request, our team will reach out to welcome you and help you get connected to our programs, events, and ecosystem support opportunities. Or if you are in our WhatsApp group and you are not yet a member, send a quick WhatsApp message to any of the executive committee members, and we will be gladly guiding you through the steps. The poll's still on. Please don't forget to answer those small questions for us to keep improving ourselves. Finally, we truly look forward to continuing to grow this community of founders, investors, and builders committed to shaping Africa's entrepreneurial future. Ravi, thank you for your leadership, your candor, and your commitment to advancing meaningful impact on our continent. I also want to say a huge thanks to the technical and support team for all their effort behind the scene to make this happen. Thanks to the executive committee for your support and guidance. And finally, thanks to each of you for joining, contributing, and learning with us today. We will be sharing the recording within the next 48 hours with all registrants. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next HAE Africa webinar series session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.